And we're live. Special, what I'm calling a foreshadow because I usually have a 4 o'clock shadow show, Pete. I don't know if you're aware of that, but uh, 4 o'clock Central, anyway. And we feature collectibles, toys, comics, DVDs, CG projects, all kinds of stuff. And I see we already have some people out here. Mr. Nephilim Squadron himself, Hex Allen Comics. And Tree Goblin, I really want to thank you today for being here.
What does that mean? A fake stream like yesterday? What are we talking about?
Another fake stream like yesterday. I don't know. Second like, yeah, and he was first in on my little announcement that you were going to be on today because I did a little announcement video, did it live, and he was the only one that got in. Red Rum. So, and I believe I know Tree Goblin's from the UK, so
Oh wow!
I get a large UK following.
It's
Some
probably
are.
the time of day you're streaming. You know, it's not so bad over
Mm-hmm.
there for them. Usually, I'm
Well,
streaming at
no,
like nine
actually,
o'clock at
when
night,
I
and it's
do
pretty.
4 o'clock, it's like 10 p.m. there, Pete.
Oh well, usually when I do 9 o'clock, it's like 2 or 3 a.m. there, so it's a
Okay,
big
well,
difference.
how do you do on views for something like that?
Well, for the UK, I guess we get sometimes a couple people that stay up super late, but usually it's not really. We're not really getting the UK audience when
Do,
we're
do
going
you
at 9.
do
But I
you?
noticed that when we do something during the midday or whatever over here, it's 1 o'clock by me. That we usually will get more of a UK and just Europe in general kind of an audience.
Well, he may be correct on that. Rex put up 3 streams yesterday and streamed for 26 seconds.
Oh
Laugh
wow.
out loud. That may be true. That may be true. I was trying and submitting it, and it was just spinning, spinning for some reason. I was just trying to get a promo in for you coming on, and kind of ran into a few snags. And Tree Goblin's very observant. He says, "Hello, Pete."
Hello, Tree Goblin.
Yeah, we've got a loyal following from the UK. Some toy people that come in, and Tree Goblin's into trees.
I
I've
wouldn't have
seen
ever
on his
known.
I've seen on his Instagram he does Oriental bonsai trees and things like that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, um, but a great
I
guy.
thought you meant that Tree Goblin was literally like into trees, like in a tree somewhere,
Well,
which I
he's
imagine a Tree Goblin would
goblins
be.
are aren't god or is it trolls? I'm thinking trolls are like under bridges. Maybe he's under a tree or a bush somewhere,
Yeah, trolls are in like caves,
lurking.
bridges, that kind of thing, murky areas. But yeah, tree goblins are kind of they're always around things and hiding and inside of stuff and causing mischief.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I'm grateful for the streams that you do because I get insights like it came out on a Wednesday is one of your titles, right? And you said number two would never be reprinted again. And why is that, Pete?
Well, all of them actually won't ever be reprinted ever again. We only had number
Okay.
one that was ever reprinted. So yeah, the whole series, because it's an anthology series, we only get to print what we get to print and put out what we put out. So when it sells out, that's it. Because the rights are not ours. We don't own the rights to the story. We kind of have them on lease, I guess. And then when the issue gets published and put out there, once it sells out, that's it. We
Uh,
don't
don't you have
re up the lease.
don't you have second, third printings, and you denote them from the Alterna logo up there, a different color?
Yeah, yeah, the logo will change colors. So if it's red, if it's any color actually, other than gold, silver, or copper, it's a first printing. So if it's a gold color, it's a second printing. If it's a silver, it's a third printing, and if it's a copper, it's a fourth printing.
Okay.
So it
So
could be black, purple, red, blue. Those are all first printings.
okay. So how did you kind of get into comics? Did you read them as a kid? Are you part of the and cartoons? I know cartoons was a big influence on me and just meeting comics
Yeah, I've been
eventually.
into comics for as long as I can remember. Honestly, I think it's probably one of my first books, if anything. It might actually be one of my, actually the first. So I've always been into comics. Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four. My mom was kind of into comics in a way. So she'd pick up a comic at the convenience store on the way home from work every now and then and give it to me. And I didn't even know how to read at the time. I'm just looking at the pictures and I'm completely taken away. A lot of the comics I have from when I was a kid, they're all drawn in. They've got Spider-Man's eyes are filled in with blue pen and all this kind of stuff all over them. They're completely destroyed at this point in time, but they have some kind of sentimental value for me because they meant a lot as my first comics. Yeah. But other than that, it was a lot of the cartoons, trading cards. Especially when money was really tight growing up, it was like, okay, well, you could get a comic or you could buy a pack of cards. And back then, the cards, they'd actually give you like 10 or 12 a pack or whatever. Nowadays, it's like you get 3 cards and it's $5 or something. But for like $1, you could get a pack of cards, and the pack of cards had a bunch of characters and stories and all these things. And so eventually I kind of started getting into the trading card side of it more than the comic side of it. And then I would learn about the characters, and when I wanted to get the issues or whatever it is about the characters that I started to like because of the trading cards, I would go to the comic shop and pick out those kinds of issues. Like I liked Silver Surfer, Wolverine, Ghost Rider when I was a kid. So I'd look for those kind of issues and I'd pick them up at that point. But it was because of the trading cards got me into these characters. They'd describe them, they'd have power stats on them, so it was kind of fun. And it made feel...
No bubble gum?
No bubble gum, in the Marvel and DC cards.
Okay.
But I always like trading cards. I know even sports and things like that. Hockey, baseball, basketball, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but, you're big into hockey, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Hockey. My whole life as a kid was like hockey, comics, and sci-fi, horror, paranormal stuff. That was me as a kid. And I guess it's still me. So I've stayed consistent.
What was the paranormal stuff? Was it like you saw Poltergeist or something and it intrigued you, or?
No, I just was always interested in horror and sci-fi. I liked the aspect of space travel and the unknown and any kind of mysterious thing that no one quite knew everything about. I thought that was so fascinating.
What are some movies that it's impacted you in that genre?
Oh man, boy, oh boy, man, oh man. We watched a lot of Star Trek when I was growing up.
Okay.
First series and the Next Generation. But as far as movies go, man, there's so many sci-fi movies. I mean, there's Close Encounters. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in terms of UFO stuff that at the time was, I think, a little too frightening for me because it dealt with abductions and probing and all this other kind of stuff.
If memory serves me right, I was just a kid when Star Wars came out, but I was about 10-ish or what.
Yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. I mean, Star Wars is a definite, but it's always hard for me to classify Star Wars purely as like a sci-fi thing. It almost feels more like a fantasy adventure that takes place in space.
And of course, it's based on the old serials like Flash Gordon, Buck
Rogers.
Yeah.
And I love those too. I love Flash Gordon. I loved all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's always anytime that you could merge even like sci-fi and horror. So I loved Alien. That whole series and franchise. Anytime, Predator, anytime you can merge sci-fi and horror, I love that. I would be like 6 years old and watching that stuff. I was
Star Wars
RoboCop for Halloween when I was 5.
Yeah, I
which
did
I'm
watch
sure is inappropriate.
Yeah, Halloween movies, like I think it was 3 that was 3 more days to Halloween.
Oh yeah, Season of the Witch. Yeah, I love that one. Some people don't like that one. That's my favorite one. Yeah,
well, it's definitely memorable.
Yeah, and I thought that what they really could have done to tie it in, and I don't know if they ever did, because Halloween's kind of changed their continuity all over the place as the movies went on. But I always thought they could have just tied it into saying like, Michael Myers had one of the first kinds of masks, and he put it on, and then it took him over, essentially. So you could have tied it into that he got this mask when he was a kid from Silver Shamrock when they put it out, and he it interacted with him in a strange way, and then that's how you could tie in that third movie. I don't know if they ever did anything like that, but there's an easy way to bring that in. But I always thought that that was a really interesting movie. Even when I was a kid, that was my favorite one. I thought it was so creepy with the masks. I thought, and then as an adult to learn about the Celtic Druids thing, that was kind of interesting as well. I thought the whole thing was great. I loved it, but some people I know it's polarizing for them. They don't really like it too much, and then some people love it too.
I enjoyed it. I think Close Encounters, going back to that, was out at the same time as Star Wars.
Yeah.
I think it kind of helped that movie for Spielberg that Star Wars was out at that time, because Star Wars was a one in a lifetime. It was almost like King Kong. King Kong during the height of the Depression, when people were really feeling the pinch, came out, and people were lined up for blocks to give their nickel to get a little escapism from their troubles. And it was really the first large monster movie. Um, uh, and it was a big phenomenal, sci-fi. I mean, the reviews at the time was, oh, it's so realistic, even his hair bristles, and you know, and Star Wars was kind of like the same thing. I know it lasted around here for about a year and a half. People were watching it a year and a half later in the theaters. That's amazing to me. I've only seen one other movie, and that was Passion of the Christ, get such a response and be in the theater for maybe 6 months.
Yeah, I remember Titanic being in the theater for
Oh,
what seemed at least like a year.
yeah, maybe. Yeah,
And that's why it made as much money as it did. But nowadays the movie's in there for like a month. It's kind of long. It's usually the big 1 or 2 weekends, and most movies, if they have staying power at all, it's crazy to see. But yeah, Star Wars. I obviously I didn't grow up at that point in time when it came out. I saw the special edition. I had already seen the Star Wars movies though before the special editions came out. But I saw the special edition, the first one, in the theater, and then I remember being kind of okay about Episode 1 when the first one came out, because I thought it had so much potential. I thought there's no way they're going to kill off Darth Maul. I thought, they're going to do all these kinds of fun,
hmm
different things. It wasn't a perfect movie to me. I was still disappointed in some ways. I thought Anakin was way too young. I thought that the
yeah,
CGI, well, it wasn't CGI Yoda yet, but I thought it didn't really make sense to have Yoda look much younger than what he looked like, considering his age progression. It wouldn't have been that long.
right.
But meanwhile,
Unless
he
they
looks like he's
just
half the age.
unless they hit puberty like at 50 and then accelerate to about 80.
Yeah. Once
Yeah,
they hit like 850, I guess,
yeah,
then it's all downhill from there.
real
But
quick.
so I thought a couple of things, and I must have been, I don't even know at the time. I must have been like 15 or something like that, or something when that came out. But when they kind of didn't make anything out of Darth Maul and a bunch of other things in the series, and it kind of got, to me, it kind of lost a lot of the Star Wars-ness. I know people nowadays lament the Disney Star Wars, and I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not a fan of that. But to me, it really fell off the rails once they started tinkering with everything, with the special editions, and then with the prequels especially. And then they would go in there and tinker it further. So there's like 4 different like special editions, and the ones that like erase the actor that played Anakin, and then the Jedi movie at the very end, his Force Ghost being like hating Christians. I thought that was so stupid too, because that didn't really make sense. He went back to the light side when he passed away as an older fella, so he wouldn't be a young Force Ghost.
hmm
All these kinds of things that just seemed like they got in the way of the story, and it just kind of, they did it to do it for some reason. I thought that kind of ruined some of it, but I'm lucky enough that I've got them on DVD, like the ones that aren't, the ones that were actually transferred from the Laserdisc. It was a very limited release,
Oh, wow.
and it's not the greatest picture. It's
hmm
fine, but it's the original theatrical. So I can't watch the special editions, and I can barely bring myself to watch the prequels. I know some people like Revenge of the Sith and things like that, but to me, I have my own, and I guess that's what happens, right, with great stories. And when they start to continue again out of nowhere, it
Money.
turns into, you've already based your own sort of mythos in your mind. You've come up with your own thing. So hearing about like the Clone Wars and Obi-Wan with Anakin, I'm picturing an older guy with Anakin at that point in time, almost like an equal. And then they part ways, and I'm picturing that the prequels, if they were ever done, would have started off with that, and then you'd have the second one be more about the fall of Anakin, and then you'd have the third one about Anakin as Darth Vader kind of hunting down the Jedi and doing that kind of a thing. I thought it kind of all went a little weird with, he's a little kid, and then he's a teenager, and then all this other, like, it just kind of went wishy-washy.
With the lady.
Well, yeah, because especially when they're saying Anakin was too old to get trained, I'm thinking like, well, then Luke was ancient when he's getting trained at that point. I mean, you guys waited a long time, didn't you?
Yeah.
They could have got to him a little bit earlier. So Ben's just waiting in the desert the whole time there. So I thought it was kind of strange with that. I thought that, never having Qui-Gon really show up at any point, they just kind of reference him. The whole Jar Jar thing is just, so there's a lot to look at and think.
Did you read the books?
Continuity wise, it was strange. You mean like some of the expanded universe type stuff?
Like, yeah, I guess the novels or whatever. I don't. I just kind of enjoy the movies.
I didn't really read a lot of those. I was aware of a lot of those, so it was more like understanding where the storylines were kind of going, and I thought that was kind of interesting too, to have that progression with Luke going to the dark side and things like that. And I think you can kind of see that
earlier today, as a matter of fact, Star Wars Rebels. Now, do you watch the animated stuff? Any of the animated stuff that's come out?
I've seen some of that, but the only animated thing I really watched as a kid was Droids.
Oh,
and
really?
some of the Ewoks cartoon. But like Clone Wars, I couldn't stand the animation style. I've never liked that.
You weren't
3D
Thundercats?
Style. Oh, well, I watched that big time. But I mean, the only type of Star Wars animated that I had watched was like Droids and Ewoks.
Okay.
But it wasn't really like one of my favorite shows.
I would think that you're missing out, because I got like it was 5 seasons of that Star Wars animated thing that was on Cartoon Network.
The Clone Wars, right?
Yeah. Yeah, did you watch that? Any of that?
No, I couldn't ever really stand the animation style for that.
Okay.
And again, I thought with that, the stories, it made almost the films for me even more convoluted, and more questions would just pop up in my mind of like, so why wasn't this character there? And why is everything seems like they're revising the history that they already laid down because they thought of some good idea later on. So to me, it just turned into this big confusing mess where there isn't a script supervisor that's actually keeping continuity in mind. And I mean, the continuity kind of went out the window too with the prequels. But yeah, I agree, Doc. Blaylock says Star Wars died with one word, midichlorians. I thought that was so strange too, to put science behind the mythos and the metaphysical, and to boil it down into like, oh, it's pretty much just, in your cell structure. And then that's the explanation.
The one thing that sticks with me about the Clone Wars, and thanks for telling me the title of it, because the title didn't really, it's been a while since I've seen them, but you talked about, the guy that was cut in half. I forget. You said you...
Oh, Darth Maul.
Oh, yeah. Darth Maul. See, I can't. They show his brother in that, and he's yellow with the black.
Yeah, well, because don't they bring back Darth Maul, if I'm remembering correctly, and he's half of him, he's got like he's on some kind of cybernetic spider-looking legs. I thought that would have been interesting to bring him back and kind of have speaking of foreshadow what they do to Anakin, to turn him into kind of like this cyborg, bionic man. But first they would have tested it on Darth Maul, and he should have stayed the big bad the whole time, and Anakin should have killed him. And then took his place. You can't have a double-bladed lightsaber guy who looks as cool as he does, and then you get rid of him in the first. It makes no sense.
Sort of rite of passage, right? He would kill him off like he did. He did Dooku. He cut his hands off and then killed him.
Yeah,
and really, that was a big turn.
And even that whole thing, too, with Dooku, it just kind of felt like, all right, so you guys aren't, fully really aware of this guy or of all of these guys. Really, you're telling me essentially then that the dark side of the Force is kind of stronger than the light side because they could mask themselves so much easier and just infiltrate. That kind of seems pretty stupid, where the light side is supposed to be about perception and being able to, tell the truth and what's truth and what's lie and all these other kind of things that you pick up on in the original 3 movies. It just seems like there's a lot of different things that aren't fully established, and it almost feels like we're making it up as we go along. And then no one kind of, does the rewrite part of like, okay, you can make it up as you go along, but then you got to make sure that it makes sense with what was
Right.
previously established.
And they're
Um,
supposed to have a huge continuity Bible and stick to that, right? I mean, in filmmaking.
yeah, yeah, and it's just yeah, it's a bittersweet thing for me with Star Wars. I have to think, well, it's nice that they never made more than those three. That's what I think.
I think that's what a lot of people think because there's a shift, right? And he remarketed them, and I know I didn't get them off the Laserdisc like you did. But I have the original like on VHS and then copied it over, I think,
Oh
to
yeah, yeah.
DVD. But it has the original before, and then of course I have the other, and I have the original Star Trek, but then I have the enhanced Star Trek, which really doesn't add that much, and I didn't think it added that much to Star Wars either.
Yeah, yeah.
When
Same thing with like Indiana Jones. They did a couple of different tweaks to certain things that didn't really make too much sense. And I know
right,
since that point in time, they've kind of dropped a lot of that special edition, remastered, whatever, revamped Indiana Jones stuff. But the
resale, get my money again.
yeah, the Star Wars one to me is still puzzling. I don't know if it's a rights issue or whatever. But if Disney wants to make some serious money, they should just Blu-ray it up and release the theatrical of Star Wars. But maybe at this point, who knows? Maybe too much damage has been done. I know they keep on doing things. They got that Obi-Wan series out. I don't watch any of that. I don't have Disney Plus or whatever. But every
Right.
time I see anybody talk about it, I'm like, I'm glad I don't watch it. Because again, in my mind, and I don't know if it's just we all do this or it's my writer brain at this point or whatever. But I'll hear about these plots and I'll hear about what's going on with these things, and I'm just like, man, that sounds like the weirdest way to take that. It doesn't really make too much sense, but nothing about a lot of mainstream entertainment makes a lot of sense these days.
Now, were you a monster kid growing up? Did you like monsters?
Yeah, I loved monsters, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Just all that
All
sci-fi
kinds of
or
monsters, and not
yeah.
just like the technical, vampires, werewolves, zombies, or whatever, but any kind of monster, creature, unknown, big, gigantic, scary thing. That's why I love cryptids. To me, anything that's unknown, anything that's a mystery, anything that we don't quite have our finger on the pulse of just yet, and there's all these possibilities. That fascinates me. That's always interested me.
Right on. Well, how is that how has that really influenced your publishing? I mean, I know you do like monster things, and another little insight you gave me was okay, these are going to be it came out on a Wednesday, these covers I'm doing. And you generally get a comic book board, don't you? And work on a comic book board and do the artwork sometimes just on a comic book board
Oh
for a
yeah,
cover.
yeah. On backing boards, it's great because they're
Or
pretty
backing
thick.
boards. Yeah.
They're pretty thick, and on one side it's like a glossy-ish side, and on
Hmm.
the other side it's nice and uncoated, and you can actually do some pretty great art on there.
Hmm.
So I usually I draw a lot of the time on those if I don't have someone specifically requesting a certain size or whatever when I have time to do commissions. But it's great to work on. Yeah, so I've done a lot of art on comic book backing boards.
Yeah, I have a. You're in good company. I have a Flash by Carmen Infantino on on a comic book board.
Oh, fantastic, man,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
great.
we've got some original artwork. Well, I have you on here, Pete. I can't help but want to show you something that you might be you know impressed by. I don't know. And this was actually given to me by a friend. Um, we kind of collect the same. The color guide to Avengers #4,
Oh wow, man,
uh, one and only. With the different layers. This one,
that's awesome.
sometimes they do them in acetate like this, and they're all different depending on where they were printed out. Has the markings on there, like the Hulk's head. I think it's circled in red or something for some reason. Some side notes there in the punch holes, but sometimes they do these on paper as well.
That's great. Yeah, the CMYK laid out. That's awesome. It's like the
Yeah.
same way that it goes to print. You get those four color plates and the cyan, the magenta, the yellow, and the black. They all kind of overlay on each other to make that image.
Now, if I
A
could
lot of people
only
don't really
inherit
understand
his
that.
signed Jack Kirby oil painting,
A Jack Kirby oil painting. You said you're
Yep.
interested in.
Yeah, he has a Jack Kirby oil painting.
Well, best of luck with that. Goodness, that's got to
Yeah,
be a pretty penny.
maybe I'll talk him out of that someday. And actually, it has nothing to do with heroes. It's a desert scene. It's just a landscape. He went out to California in later years, and I think that's probably when he did it. Either that or it's a forgery, but it looks real to me. The signature and everything.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's pretty cool.
So you have a, let's use correct English around here. You have a website, don't you?
Yes, I do. You mean me personally, or you mean Alterna?
Well, Alterna, aren't you Alterna? Aren't you all things Alterna?
I guess not necessarily. I mean, we have a whole bunch of creators at Alterna.
Okay. Yeah, Keith Gleason and Geronimo Draws, right? And
Yeah, so we got alternacomics.com. That's where we sell all the Alterna books. There's information about the books on there. You got submissions up on there too. Our submissions are open 24/7, 365.
mhm.
So yeah, you guys can find out pretty much everything you need to know for the most part at what's actually current at Alterna, because there's a lot of stuff that we published over the years that, since it's creator owned, we don't have any access to that information. We don't post those books or anything like that. So when they're out of contract or anything like that, the books get taken off the site. We make sure to
Okay.
put what's present for the most part and active on our site.
Yeah, you have quite a line. What are some of the titles that are no longer with you? I know that the 12, if I'm pronouncing that right? The 12 that I
Well, I like to
actually,
say the XII, because if someone looks it up
okay,
and they try to look up the 12, they'll never find it. So
okay.
the
I didn't know really what to
XII,
call it.
yeah, the XII, Roman numeral 12. Yeah, the last issue just came out, so that's available right now. But issue 5 is sold out, and that's not going back to print. So if you have issue 5, that's pretty rare.
Okay. So I need to get an issue 5. Well,
It should be on eBay, but it might
yeah,
be
I
for
actually have
more
2
expensive.
ads in this one, the last issue. Um, that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about was ads. But before we do this, I want to kind of look at the website as well. And yeah, you even have spring pre-orders on there, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, we get that campaign up and running right now. It's in demand on
Uh,
Indiegogo, and we're getting the books in sometimes early next week. So then we're going to start fulfillment with the rest of the campaign. It's probably going to take about 2 to 3 weeks. And
mhm.
then we've got the summer campaign launching on June 21st, the first day of summer. That's in pre-launch mode right now, so people can sign up for that. And if you become a backer after you sign up on the pre-launch page, if you become a physical perk backer, you'll get the Mr. Crypt Alterna foil trading card, and that's a set that's running parallel to the Alterna series set, and those
Now
cards are pretty rare.
the summer campaign here is in sign up right now, right?
Yep.
For okay. And what do you get special if you sign up on your mailing list
Well,
with
I
that?
just said that,
Oh,
Rex.
you just said that. I'm sorry, Pete. If you're with me, if I should know you're thorough
It
because
would be the Mr. Crypt Alterna foil trading card. So make sure you sign
selected
up for
here.
that, become a
Okay.
physical perk backer, and then you will receive that card automatically. It'll be just added on. I'll cross-reference the email that you signed up with. So make sure it's the same email that you use to back the campaign.
Okay.
Otherwise, if it's a different email, when I go to cross-reference it, if it's not showing up, then you won't end up getting the card. So make sure it's the same email you use to back on Indiegogo.
Now
Uh,
you
but
you
yeah, so
came
we
up.
got that on there.
Excuse me. You came up with King Cryptid, didn't you, as a character?
Yep.
You create characters. What is your art background, Pete?
I went to school for graphic design, but I mean, I've been drawing my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I went for graphic design, but I had like an accelerated fine arts program. I mostly did painting and charcoal drawings and some pencil and ink. But I got away from a lot of that when I became publisher at Alterna. And now I'm finally able, with the way that things have positioned themselves, I'm finally able to get back into the saddle again of becoming more of a creator. And I've had a lot of ideas over the years that I've written down, and I've thought, well, I have the time, then maybe I'll do it. But some people have actually done those ideas since then. It's been about 12 to 13 years since my last book. And this one, though, is not just a book that I thought, oh, that'll be a fun story to tell. This one is something that I'm compelled to tell. This is something that I'm going to be working on for the rest of my life. So this is an episodic, ongoing series. And again, this is not something that really could have been done through the traditional publishing and distribution system. Putting that through Diamond, through the comic shop, I probably could have done like 5 or 6 issues, unless we were lucky enough to have like a Walking Dead kind of thing all of a sudden just take off, which is lightning in a bottle at this point, unfortunately, in comics. So many of the comics that we know and love, they wouldn't be able to be around nowadays. It took 26 or 27 issues. If you're counting it, I guess 27 issues. For the 27th was Detective Comics, number 27 with Batman debuting. If you're talking about a series that needs to last, 26 to 27 issues to get an iconic character out there, that's not really going to last nowadays, which is so unfortunate because the way the system is set up with the pre-ordering and everything else, you almost have to spoil the book through the comic shop and get the reader involved and have all these gimmicks and variants to make sure the sales stay up. It's not a great market, especially if you want to make sure that storytelling comes first and not any kind of gimmick for sales. But like this, where we're able to sell directly, we're able to crowdfund, engage with the reader, have some fun stuff available as well that you can't put through the comic shop. We're actually able to do a series like this, and I can with confidence say, as long as people want to read it, I've got the stories to tell, and we'll keep doing a new campaign every year. We'll keep getting 4 to 5 issues out every single year, and I'm blessed that I've got some amazing artists to work with. So Christian Rossi on issue 1, Nick Hunter on issue 2, Alex Jovich on issue 3, and Kier Covington on issue 4. Every single issue is going to have a different artist, unless we have like a small story arc, then it'll be the same artist. But other than that, it's something that's great because we can actually pay attention to what the readers are into. So if they dig a certain character and they like that and they like to see more of that character, I can pay attention to that and come up with another story involving that character. If they like a certain artist and they really seem to enjoy their style, I could talk to them and see if they can get another issue going with me. So there's all these kinds of things that I'm able to pay attention to a lot more, where through the traditional market, everything is very arm's length. So you're kind of sometimes just wandering through the dark and hoping that you find the door on the way out. But most of the time you just end up hitting the wall. It's really difficult in terms of trying to understand what the market really wants, unless you're paying attention. And especially, even if you know what the market wants, it's difficult to break through to the retailer sometime to let them know that this is what the market wants. Now, so many retailers have the mindset that even if it's a great indie book and it looks awesome, if they've never heard of you, they won't really carry that book. They'll order it maybe for the pull list customers and whatever, but I got tired of at Alterna, we would have stores that would have 6 to 10 people with our books on their pull list, but that store would never order any for the shelf. Yeah. And the reasoning would be, and it's crazy to hear it, and to say it out loud is even crazier, but they would say, well, indie comics just don't really sell. And I was thinking, well, you got 6 to 10 people that it's selling to. So shouldn't you put that on the shelf and then say, hey, these are what our customers are getting? Every single comic shop should do something like that. It'd be great marketing.
Considering, I don't know what you mean by indie, because I mean, if it's not the big two, well, you have Image and you have Dark Horse and others that have come and gone, other publishers, of course, which had high quality, like Cross.
Yeah, indie is independent. Yeah, indie's independent. If you're talking about a corporate type publisher like the big two, if you're talking about a publisher that predominantly licenses material, and then they put out everything that's based on a movie or a TV show or that kind of a thing, they're not considered as indie as much as some other ones. There's like a weird little hierarchy that occurs. Yeah. But for the most part, indie nowadays has become synonymous with creator owned. It's become kind of like what Image had started out with. So you're talking about people who are putting their own comics out. They're not licensing anything from a corporation or another brand. They're not dealing with characters that they didn't create or they don't own. You're talking about stuff that, in all intents and purposes, feels a lot more to me anyway, like when Marvel was starting out and it was coming straight from the creators of these characters. These were the stories. So
Mm.
there's kind of an official feeling to it, where these are the people that have had this vision and they're putting these stories out. And for better or worse, it's at least got a lot of heart to it. And some of them are truly fantastic. But even some of my local comic shops, they didn't want to even stock Walking Dead because they thought indie books don't sell. But the indie books are it's a large variety. For
Right.
all the BS we hear about diversity nowadays, people sure as hell don't want to diversify, which might be why some people don't think that there are so many kinds of comics, is because a lot of these shops don't diversify what they carry. There's comics for every single thing. There's all kinds of characters. Every single character, every single story has already been made. It's just going to be a different story, a different interpretation based on that creator making it. But as far as different kinds of things and being represented, or different characters, or different stories, or different whatever, it's all out there. It's been out there. So it might be a case of, like I said, comic shops and retailers not actually diversifying what they carry, which is a big problem because only about maybe 10% of them carry independent comics. Most of them just carry Marvel and DC, and many of them lament it, which is unfortunate because, again, you don't have to just stick to Marvel and DC. There's so many comics out there. Market it with genre. Set up your store so that it's horror, sci-fi, the way you would go to a bookstore, or back in the day with, and they still have it now, but it's virtual and digital. But back in the day with like movie rental stores, they didn't do everything from the movie publisher, the studio, and then say, well, these are the movies this studio came out with, which is how a lot of shops do it, where they go, here's the publisher and what they put out. That doesn't mean anything to any new reader. But what means something to the new reader is the genre. So they go, okay, well, I know I'm into horror. I know I'm into sci-fi. I like superheroes. I like fantasy, whatever it may be. And then they can go to that genre and find a new book. But going in there and seeing alphabetized books, that's already something for the initiated. That's for something that you're already familiar with it. You've got knowledge of it. You're coming in there and you know what you want to get. That doesn't help you out if you want to browse. Then all of a sudden it turns into this big, overwhelming system that makes no sense whatsoever, especially to most new readers. It's very intimidating. So if comic shops were to actually tool their systems that way, and some of them have, but most haven't, if they were to actually do that, they would notice that they would get more sales because it'd be easier to sell these books to people who aren't necessarily comic readers but are interested in it.
Right on. Uh, what would, if Alterna gets to the size of, say, Dark Horse or Image, you're saying corporate, where it's maybe even licensing out? Not that Alterna would do that. Uh, are you still independent
To
at
me,
that point?
no. If you start predominantly licensing,
Hmm.
no. To me, you're not independent.
So it's.
You're a smaller publisher. You might not be as large as Marvel or DC, but to
Mhm.
me, your material is no longer dependent upon the independent creator. Your material is dependent upon another corporation and their brand. So unless of course you get someone like, if it's the creators of said brand coming to make a comic book. So if someone were to create a film and then they were also to create that comic book, then that would still be considered independent. You're not licensing that thing and having someone else make the story and then having the approval process of licensing comics, which is why a lot of licensed comics also take so long to get out to the shelf. There's a delay here and there because they got to go through the licensor and say, okay, well, is this something that you're okay with? Can we put this out there? Is the quality up to your standard? And unfortunately, a lot of licensed comics, the departments literally don't look at anything. And it's just a lot of bureaucracy involved. And unfortunately, licensed comics, for the most part, generally seem to get that they're lesser quality than some of the other kinds of comics. Not always, but most of the time. So it's unfortunate that that's the way the comics are treated. Again, it's a kind of a little excess gimmick to just have to kind of round out your base. But the comics that are truly, I think, the best ones that we all really love have stories with great content in them, in terms of there's character depth, there's interesting plots, there's things that occur that feel like they matter. You become emotionally invested with what the characters are going through. It's not just a throwaway. So I think, again, when it comes to the mainstream, they did it so well for so long, but at some point in time, it seems like they thought that was a detriment, that their history, their continuity, that those things were detrimental. That was the thing that was pushing readers away. That's not the thing that pushes readers away at all. It's how the story's being told. That's what pushes the reader away. So you could have issue 500, and as long as issue 500, you didn't have to read all 499 other issues to understand what's now happening in issue 500. You had an episodic style of telling the story, which is a lot of the time you see that with like Batman the Animated Series or X-Men the Animated Series, which very loosely had some plots that connected. But you had a lot of these things with television shows that kind of understood the episodic style of telling stories.
Right.
But then the comics, it started to become this weird, convoluted, well, then you got to read that issue and that issue and that issue, and you got to pick up this other series you never really read before, and you got to hunt down this one to find the whole story. It became this big, gigantic mess to try to sell all these different titles when, in all honesty, you know, thinking of it in terms of the main publishers, if you think about like DC Comics and how many different Batman titles there are, how many different Superman titles there are, why not just put out Superman 10 times a month instead of having Man of Steel, Action Comics, Adventures of Superman, all the other miniseries, and then you got to get this story here and get that. Just put out Superman 10 times a month. We could have Superman like 3,000 at this point.
Like they had Action Comics weekly that came out weekly.
Yeah,
but I think the
very
quality,
similar to that.
I think the quality suffered because, you know, it really takes the time to make a book.
Absolutely, yeah. And then you need an editor to oversight and see that every series is on the same page, you know, and sometimes it isn't. But if you had this one team and then you had multiple creators handling the different duties, kind of just like a TV show would have multiple writers and exactly.
Yeah.
You'd have a more steady publishing line, and you'd also have everybody reading the same book. So you'd have more people on the same page with like, oh, I'm reading Superman. You know, what else are you reading? Oh, I'm reading Superman also. You know, but instead it turns into, well, I'm reading Man of Steel and I'm reading this other one and I'm reading, I don't know, I don't want to get involved with that other line. It turns into this big mess where now everyone's not on the same page anymore, which is part of what made comics such a successful format for selling the story, was because for the longest time it was just the one issue and everyone was reading that issue. You know, and then you can get those higher print runs, so your economy of scale goes way down. So now all of a sudden you're printing, you know, 2 or 3 million of an issue. Even nowadays, they could still do it if they condense the line. Now you're printing like 2 or 3 million of each issue, selling them for much bigger of a profit, and you're having everybody read the same thing and talk about the same issue because they're all on the same page. But instead, they kind of just spread everything out, and they think, well, you know, they'll be forced now to buy this one and that one. And well, all I could think is, why are you having product lines that you need to force people to buy because they're doing so poorly? Just stick to what is really strong, because that's what I'm doing with King Cryptid. Some people have asked, well, with King Cryptid, you're going to have so many other characters. You're going to have all these different plots. You're going to have all these different types of things. What if certain characters take off? Are you going to do a side series? Are you going to do one-shots? Are you going to do a mini-series? Hell no. It's all staying in the King Cryptid series. I'll just tell the stories within that series. Instead of forcing and creating all these other types of things and convoluting the whole thing.
One of the things that in my viewers here know that I was very upset back in 1983 when Adventure Comics, after running 5-6 decades, at issue 503, just celebrated their 500th issue, shut down, and it's an anthology book. You know, why not put some of your best characters on there, your most popular characters, to boost sales if sales are down? I mean, it's an anthology. It can be anything, right, Pete?
Yeah, no, 100%. You know, we've seen a lot of publishers do some pretty confusing things over the years, you know, and then when they find a character is hot, they'll start creating all these different titles and all these different things with the character, and it turns into this big wishy-washy, nothing really makes sense, and nothing feels like it has any kind of urgency, importance, you know, staying power. It just kind of is there to be there. We've seen that happen with like Wolverine, Deadpool, Harley Quinn, any kind of character that is like hot for the time. The publishers go full scale, and you know, just they're in every book, and then they got like 10 different miniseries, and then, you know, and people get really sick of it, and it's an overexposure issue with these characters.
I think so. I mean, with Silver Surfer, Stan Lee wanted to use him sparingly because he thought he was a very, very special character. And
like you knew it would be really important this issue when you saw him show up. You know, like
there was a 5-year period, I think, that Silver Surfer was in no comic. You know, he just didn't use him unless he had an important story to tell with him. You know, um,
Yeah.
I think we need to see more of that in comics. Uh, what's I'm going to kind of go to a lightning round here because I don't want to. I don't want to. I'm going to throw some questions out at
Sure.
you because I don't want to run out of time with you, which is eventually going to happen. And your little timer, Timey Tim, right, is not gonna kick
Yeah.
me in the ass too hard.
He runs the show around here, not me.
Well, that's true. I know he's really the editor in chief, right, at Alterna.
Exactly.
And in
Yeah.
fact, I think he's probably Jim Shooter. But anyway, you finally got you a good printer, didn't you?
Yeah, it's great to finally have a reliable printer that will actually do what they say and make sure that books are done. For instance, I couldn't believe how quickly they got done with this recent batch. Every single time I'm thinking, it's gonna break at some point. They're gonna be like, oh, well, there's paper shortages and then the supply chain issues, so we can't do this for like 3 or 4 months.
Right.
The way some printers have been, we've been very lucky that they've been not just timely with all of their books, but they've been of very good quality. So I'm hoping that we're going to be working with them for years to come because it's been a joy of an experience, which is for those that have ever tried to maintain a relationship with a printer, sometimes it's not really the greatest experience. We've
Right.
been through, I think this might be our fourth or fifth printer at this point, but
Now,
hopefully we've got this one for a while.
do you get your trading cards, Pete, printed up at the same place, or is it at a
Nope,
different place?
we use a different printer for the trading cards. Yeah.
Okay. Because you do some lovely trading cards, and then, like you said, the stats cards
Thank you.
uh,
Yeah, yeah.
that you kind of do, and then your individual property cards. You know, just a few of them. I really like Log. You know, of course, I
That's
have my
awesome. Yeah, he's a lot
favorites
of fun.
too. What'd you say?
He's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like
he's a
that
lot of fun,
character.
and and from the current comic, he seems to get secondary. He's really kind of fleshing out into different characters along with Log, and his lore is kind of growing over time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, they're doing a great job of that. I think there's 7 or so issues in the series, and then he's gonna revisit it and see if people want more log. But I think they're gonna. So he
hey,
he should just
Shadowhawk.
start preparing to make more issues, which would be Ski Staharsky, of course, which is the
Yeah.
writer creator of Log.
Now, here's a title, Wolf and Batsy, right? That he's got a lot of lore, doesn't he, already
Oh
that he's kind
yeah,
of published? And
yeah.
is that stuff going to be republished or redrawn or?
Yeah, it basically is. I think the first 6 issues at Alterna are pretty much remastered versions of the stories that he had published previously over the years. I think the series has been around for about maybe 10 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And through published independently from him, and then a couple issues were published at a publisher. And he's going to have issue 7 is going to be a new issue at Alterna. He's going to have a couple of completely new issues here, but for the most part, I believe he's got like about at least 30 to republish. So we're going to be publishing Wolf and Batsy for a very long time, and it's finding a whole new audience because there's a ton of people that are like, I can't believe this has been around for so long. I just never knew about it. And again, that's a testament to the way the comic distribution
I
system
think
works.
on the winter campaign, it being new with Wolf and Batsy #3 there was probably your most popular title, you know, ordered on
Oh yeah,
that
Wolf and
campaign.
Batsy, hands down, has been the most popular issue on each campaign so far. But yeah,
Oh,
people
okay.
are really digging that series and they're enjoying it, and it's getting better and better. And it's great just to see all the characters that Brian is doing. Brian Baugh, the creator and writer and illustrator, and actually letterer too, for Wolf and Batsy. But he's putting in all these kinds of characters. There's all kinds of plot, but every single issue, for the most part, is episodic style. So it does carry over some storylines here and there, but it's something you could get into Wolf and Batsy with issue 5 or issue 6 or issue 15 when that comes out, and still enjoy that series, which is, I think, a testament to him as well as a
Do you
creator.
think that hurts a title? I don't personally.
No, I
Kind of
don't
like
think it does at all.
Spawn going past Cerebus is mark with
Yeah,
300
that's
301.
fantastic.
It's
Yeah.
fantastic, and I like Todd McFarlane saying this will not go into uh, another series or something, or if it does, we'll create it. I know he's doing the Spawn universe now and stuff, but I mean, he's going to continue the numbering. I hate it when they renumbering or do double numbering
Yeah, there's no reason to do any of that. I think in comics they put too much emphasis on all these things that aren't really the
on a number
actual.
one issue.
Yeah, they're not
Yeah,
all the
every
things
other
that
week.
actually are bad for sales. I mean, there's so many books that they're not number one, and
Yeah.
they're very popular and very valuable too because things happen in them. Having to go back and reset or reboot to number one every time you think you're going to tell a new story or introduce a character or even like give a character, and this has happened all throughout comics, not just recently, but giving a character its own series when the character really doesn't deserve its own series. It's not popular enough. Just leave it as a good side character in the main series.
Do you think they're chasing lightning in a bottle?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. Yeah.
I'm old enough to know when Ninja Turtles came out. Now I got them in back issue 2, but that was right after they first came out. Never got a number 1, but I got a 2, 3, and 4, and I wasn't sure about it. You know, that title was kind of weird title, like Don Chen puts out, and I thought I took 2 home and then couldn't wait to go back the next day and get the other 2. It really clicked with me. It looked like an underground comic. Uh, the thing that impressed me is it was black and white, but it had that gray tone in there that made it look really different than anything else I'd seen before. But even at that, Pete, it took really the cartoon, them kind of going, like you said, from independent to something else, to really
Yeah.
take off. It wasn't instantaneously, even though they were selling out every issue.
Yeah, I think there's I mean, this is my theory anyway behind it. I think a lot of the bigger publishers, they have the money to create the titles. It doesn't matter if the title sells or not. What matters is that the title is there on the shelf and forces the retailer to order that title instead of your title. And what I mean is your title, it could be anyone else's title. Because they don't want to necessarily not have your comic sell. What they don't want is another Ninja Turtles. They don't want another Walking Dead. They don't want another thing that takes off out of nowhere. They want to make sure that that shelf space is theirs. So instead of doing a thing that happens a lot of time in big box stores where they rent the space, they buy it out, what happens is that they flood the shelf. So they'll flood the shelf, they'll overwhelm the retailer, they'll force the retailer to put their budget towards these big two kind of publishers, thinking, well, people know this character as opposed to this other one, so I have more likely, of a chance of selling this issue because it has a character they've heard of from a company that they heard of. But that's really just not the case. To think about it like that is kind of putting your own business at a disservice, because now you've just become a franchise for the larger publishers as opposed to being your own business that should be able to understand what it is that you're selling, your customer base, what they're into, that kind of a thing. So seeing these larger publishers kind of flood the market because they didn't always do that. I mean, for the most time, when they were very successful, you're talking about they probably had 20, 25 kind of titles out at that point in time. Now, they don't have anything close to 20 or 25 titles. It's way more than that. DC's like, we're going to step it back to 52. It's like, that's not
Right.
really stepping it back.
Yeah.
I get it, but like they were putting out that much more. Marvel
I
puts
would
out even
rather
more as
see
well.
quality and
Over
not
quantity. I think
quantity.
we all would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about your auctions, Pete? You have auctions every now and then.
Yeah, we're actually having an Alterna art auction this Saturday from 1 to 4 Eastern.
Okay.
So for the most part, as many Alterna creators that can, they join in the auction. They have sketches, commission work that they're selling as an option.
Just for the auction.
They have original pages. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's all kinds of fun stuff there. Even I'll oftentimes sell pieces of Alterna history. Like sometimes I'll have like the first ever book that was put out or this first printing of that issue, or I'm going to have graded issues to sell sometime, early trading cards, that kind of a thing. So stuff that just has sometimes never been available for sale, and stuff that sometimes is very, very rare and was made in a super limited quantity. So I'll have stuff like that every now and then, but we got the Alterna creators on there, and they often have like original pages from their books, or they'll have sketches of maybe another Alterna character. So it's kind of cool to see another Alterna character drawn by another Alterna creator. So it's always fun stuff like that, and it's always a really fun time because it's such a good group of guys.
Okay, short answers, Pete. Short answers.
That's impossible for me.
It is impossible. Yeah.
There's so much to say.
Well, your history was kind of trade paperbacks at first, right?
Yeah, we mostly just put out graphic novels and trades for about 10, 11 years.
Okay. That was short answer.
Yeah. Well, that was a good one. That was just right to the point.
Do you have any ad space left? I know you were down to like 2 things on this current campaign.
On the King Cryptid campaign, there's one spot left. That's the inside front cover of issue number 4. And that's like, I think, $75. But all the other spots are sold at this point. We'll have some ad space, though, for the summer one.
Now, how is that determined? Because I noticed in Wolf and Batsy, there was like inside cover, back cover, and inside back cover. But that was it.
Yeah, that was it.
For others, there's more space in between. How
well,
does that
when
work
you
out?
go to print, it's always better to print as many or not all the titles as you can at the same page length, because this way you get the most out of what it is that you're paying for the print run. So if you've got an issue that's 32 pages, an issue that's 40, an issue that's 50, an issue that's 20, and you go to print with 4 different issue sizes, that printer is going to hit you up for 4 different setup charges. If you have all the issues set at 32, you go right there and you streamline it, and it's a very minimal charge to just put in the new version of the book. So we make sure to keep the issues at 32 total pages. So if Wolf and Batsy goes right to the end of 32 and that's it, that's it. Sometimes, I mean, we've got the Reader Reward exclusives, and sometimes we can't even fit those in the Wolf and Batsy issue. But there's some Wolf and Batsy issues and also some other issues, too, with other series, that they'll actually be they'll be longer. So they'll be treated as like a giant size or something else, or a double size. And, of course, the cover price goes up accordingly. But we'll be able to have some more ad space in an issue like that. But yeah, it really depends on the issue length and things like that.
Well, something I have to get to, you probably don't know this, but I used to work for World Color that used to publish Marvel comics, and maybe they still do. I don't know, but and I worked in the bindery. When it comes to the printing process, I might be able to tell you a little bit about that. But one thing that I've noticed with yours, and I don't know, you actually have pretty good printer now, and the quality's pretty good. But one thing I did want to point out to you that I've noticed that maybe you might not know to question them about is the staple strike. You know, because you do stitched, what we call stitched or stapled books, and sometimes it's striking a little bit too hard, too deeply into the book. If it's going like this and has a little, it needs to kind of be flush, and I've noticed that sometimes it's hitting hard and kind of warping your covers a little bit. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely noticed that. That's something I've talked to them about. Yeah.
Okay.
They're getting used to the whole idea. Every single printer that deals with comic books, they always have these little things they have to get used to, because it's such a different medium, a different way of putting these things out, that a lot of the time with a newsprint printer especially, they're used to printing away like throwaway flyers and things like that. So
yeah, not everybody.
They got to get used to understanding that condition and quality matters.
Now, will there ever be a square bound?
Probably not. The economics of it aren't really on par with making sense to put that out. No.
And what I see, Pete, is I know we're coming up on the hour mark. I know you gave me a little bit more leeway than that, but let's see. What's your favorite hero?
My favorite hero, that would have to be King Cryptid.
Okay, besides Alterna.
I guess that's a tough one. If I had to really think about it overall in my entire life, maybe I would have to say Spider-Man, or there was a time I really liked Nightcrawler a lot.
Oh, that's unusual.
Yeah,
mine's the Beast.
Yeah, it's a great character too. There's so many great ones.
How about villain?
Villain, I've always liked Magneto. I've always thought that he was.
Would you call yourself a Marvel guy primarily, or did you read DC?
Yeah, primarily Marvel, I would guess. Yeah. There's a couple DC characters and storylines that I've liked over the years, but it was mostly Marvel.
That's right. Is it Jesus? He is a superhero. I think Popeye's the first superhero, actually. Yeah, we need to get to King Cryptid for sure. Because that's up and running. But you also have a what is it? The summer campaign? Is it
Yeah,
or
the
the
the summer
spring? Yeah,
campaign is coming out, and well, the spring campaign's in demand right now. The summer campaign's
in
coming
demand.
out on June 21st. Yeah.
Okay, so you can go sign up right now for the summer campaign,
Yep.
and it's your build your own bundle. 6 issues for $15, launching the 21st. Correct?
Yeah,
Or
we've got a whole bunch of. We're simplifying the campaigns with the Alterna campaigns moving forward. We got a whole bunch of add-ons on it. A lot of people are making their own bundles now, which is great. So you could build your own bundle and basically just go into the add-on section and pick and choose the things that you want. So we've
now
got
your most
back
success.
issues, new issues, merchandise, all that kind of stuff.
Now, Pete, why couldn't you get $45,000? You got up to 44,957,000 in the because you demand it. I mean, it was just a few dollars off from being $45,000.
I know.
That's been your most successful campaign to date, correct?
I would say yes and no. Only
Monetarily wise.
because yeah, I mean in terms of money raised, yes, but we also spent a hell of a lot more on that campaign because we had a lot of reprinted issues that we gave away basically for free to people because we were raising so much money along the way.
Well, you
So
had
I
blank.
look at backer totals a lot more nowadays. So I'm trying to
Okay.
look more at the fall campaign, which was pretty good. I think that was 774. But I'm trying to beat that one with 775 on King Cryptid.
Yeah, it really is about the backers, right? I mean, you what? And I've got to get this question out. What makes a successful campaign, Pete?
I think the basis of what makes a successful campaign is kind of like the basis of what makes a successful comic. You got to have clarity. You got to have it clear in terms of what it is you're offering, what the story is about, what the rewards are. You got to have then the pricing has to be appropriate for what it is that you're charging. You got to get out there and promote it and talk about it, and not talk about it and promote it during the campaign, but also leading up to it, months and months leading up to it. To just kind of spring a campaign up out of nowhere. And I know
Yeah,
some people do that, but I really wish they wouldn't. I'd like to see everybody be as successful as they possibly could be. So when you
a
kind of
little
spring,
slow roll then.
yeah, when you kind of do like a ghost launch and just like you just put up a campaign, you never said a word about the book, you never said a word about when you were launching, and you just kind of one night you just put a campaign up and just oh yeah, we'll just launch that. You can have some success with it, but at the same time, I mean, you'd have so much more success with it if you actually let people know about it. So I'd love to see more people do stuff like that, and most people do. Most people actually do, promote it and talk about it, and they get out there and they're excited about their books. But there's every now and then, you'll see something just flop, and it's unfortunate because they just didn't really get out there to talk about it and promote it. There's only going to be really two reasons why anything fails, and it's either the quality or the lack of promotion. So sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's one or the other, but it's always one of those elements. Because you could even have something that's not really that great in quality, but you promote the hell out of it. So you'll
Yeah.
actually have success more than someone with something that's quality, and they just don't talk about it at all.
How
Uh,
important are like different tiers? I mean, because you do posters, magnets, patches, all number of things, mugs,
yeah, I mean, you know,
hockey gear.
yeah, it's been based on stuff that our readers have asked for over the years. So some stuff there's still I don't know, I can't really put my finger on it. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna do it at that certain point in time. We're not there yet. But then there's other stuff that we could do, and we could incorporate that into a campaign and see what people think about it. But yeah, for the most part, it's pretty interesting in terms of what the readers have asked for over the years. So we try to meet what their demand is if we possibly can, anyway.
Now you ship worldwide, don't you?
Oh yeah, yeah, we ship worldwide. Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, shipping outside the U.S. is not a pretty picture.
Yeah.
So
Carries in the UK.
yeah. So if you order,
Yeah.
let's say you got all 6 books from the alternate campaign, you're in the UK. I think shipping's like 30 or 35. You'll maximize what you can get with your shipping dollar. The more stuff that you order, especially if you order off of alternacomics.com. If you order like 7 to 8 books, it's way better than ordering one book because you're going to pretty much pay the same shipping. Once it hits like £2, then it starts going up incrementally. £2, £3, £4, etc.
Right. It all about pretty much weight.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
much weight. Yeah. And
And they love to round it up. You go up 1 ounce, and all of a sudden they go up to the next pound. So
right. Yeah. So let's talk about King Cryptid real quick.
Sure.
Well, I mean, not quick. You know what time you have, but
yeah. Well, right now the King Cryptid campaign is up on Indiegogo. We passed 500 backers yesterday. We're on the road
awesome.
towards. Yeah, we're on the road towards 25,000 at this point. It's about 22.5 almost, I think, for the campaign right now. We got a couple of days left on the first 30 days, and then the next 30 days we're gonna have some perks getting taken down and some perks going up. So the whole point of King Cryptid, it revolves around that character, the character of King Cryptid, and he's this cursed immortal. He's about 500 years old or so. He resides in the White Mountains of New Hampshire, and his adventures and things that take place in the series is mostly what we're following the whole entire time. Now, there's a lot of monsters, cover-ups, conspiracies, all kinds of crazy stuff that occurs within the series. It's episodic, like I had said before, and it's an ongoing series. So
now
every single
controls
issue.
Monsters? He controls.
Yeah,
monsters?
well, he doesn't control monsters, but he can talk to cryptids. He can psychically.
Okay.
He has a psychic connection with cryptids and with animals and things like that. But his power is ebb and flow with the phases of the moon. So on the night of a full moon, he's super powerful. On the night of a new moon, he's not that powerful. He's still strong. He's still stronger than the average human. But he's nowhere near as powerful as he could be on the night
Now,
of a
what
full
kind
moon.
of time setting is this? Is it set on Earth?
It's set on Earth, yeah. It's set on an Earth similar to our own. So it's got a lot of places that are real. There's places set in New Hampshire that are real, true places, just throughout New England as well. But of course, it's got that sci-fi fantasy twist to it. So not everything is 100% based in accurate history or whatever it is.
Right.
We take some license here and there, but it's got a little bit of historical fiction to it because of the fact that the character is 500 or so years old. There will be flashback issues and things like that dealing with monsters of the past or events of the past that King Cryptid was involved in.
Is he nocturnal? Because I mean, if he's walking down the Broadway,
Yeah, for the
in New
most
York,
part.
he's going to get some looks, right?
For the most part, he's nocturnal. It's funny you say that, too, because issue 13 is kind of going to be a catch-up issue. And issue 13, we're talking about a campaign that's 3 or 4 years from now. But issue 13 is going to be this issue where we essentially have a documentary that's being made. There's news coverage that's on King Cryptid. He had recently just done something that got the attention of the public. And now there's King Cryptid fever. It's the way like Bigfoot has been popularized and is on all kinds of merchandise. Well, now King Cryptid has become on all kinds of merchandise. There's people giving their recountings about the stories that they've heard, people that have allegedly met King Cryptid, and then of course, King Cryptid will be walking around not understanding what is going on. But people will see him and think that, oh, wow, that's a great costume. Look at that person's King Cryptid costume. But meanwhile, the whole time it's King Cryptid walking around town being like, what is going on here? So that'll be a fun catch-up issue for people, I think, when we get to it. But that's issue 13.
And did that kind of just slowly evolve in your head? Because I know it came out on a Wednesday. You were starting with issue 7. You were creating these covers with monsters, and I went back and bought extras for my collection because they're going to go up in value, right?
Oh, smart.
Their first
Yeah.
appearances.
And they're also not going back to print. So we're almost out of issue 7, which is the first appearance on the cover, anyway, of the Granite Beast, which makes a full appearance in issue 2 of King Cryptid.
But you
yeah,
have two other issues, right? Two
and
other
then
monsters.
there's Broog the Swamp Monster that took place. That's the cover of issue 15 of it. Came out on a Wednesday. So seeing those characters kind of make an appearance in that series, especially on the cover, I was kind of dropping Easter eggs for the past couple of years. But I knew I wanted to do a series eventually that had to do with monsters and creatures and things like that. But I didn't know when I could ever get the time to do it. So I thought, well, if I'm going to do something, I might as well. I'm making a cover. Instead of making a throwaway character that's just kind of, oh, that's a cool looking character, let's put him on a cover. I figure I'd make a character that I'm going to eventually plan on using. But
Well,
I didn't really talk about it that way to people. I just was like, oh, here's the latest, monster of the issue, and that's how it is on the covers if it came out on a Wednesday. But now I'm telling people about, these
well,
characters
I
making
had
their
already bought
appearances.
those issues, but when I heard that you said that on one of your broadcasts, I went back and bought those issues
Very
again.
smart.
Yeah, because first appearances, right? That's what really goes up in price. Key
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah, well, especially it came out on Wednesday number 7. We still had newsstand distribution too at that point, so there was a direct sales and a
Yeah,
newsstand.
yeah.
So
I've
the
got a few
newstand,
newsstands.
that's
Yeah,
that's pretty rare. So yeah,
yeah.
I can imagine those are going to be, if not worth something right now, they're definitely worth something
And
one
some
day.
of them impossible. When you mentioned it came out on a Wednesday, number two was not going. And I
Oh
went on
yeah,
eBay and I had to buy it in a lot, which was fine because at that time didn't have those issues. But there was only one on eBay.
yeah. No, I
Very
mean there's been a bunch of Alterna readers that have paid like $40 to $50 for it came out on Wednesday number 2 because that was a
wow.
pretty rare issue.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting to see the prices these will go for, considering that they start off at $1.50 to $1.99 on the cover price of it. To see these issues then being sold for $40 to $50, it's kind of crazy to see. It's kind of fun though.
Well, maybe last question, Pete. Uh, Now you're also a movie producer, right? The Chair.
Oh yeah,
How did
yeah.
that come about?
Oh, that's a super long story. But
Well,
it came out. I'll just say that it came out the way any other movie comes out. You kind of pitch it around. You write a script. People get interested. Certain
mhm,
people want to do certain things to it, and then you decide, well, maybe we'll just fund it ourselves and find some investors, and they'll get involved, and then we'll hopefully make a movie out of it. So it was fun to get the cast together. I had the joy of putting the cast together, getting like Zach Galligan from Gremlins, Noah
mhm.
Hathaway who played Atreyu in a Neverending Story when he was a kid. Roddy Piper is in the movie. He does a phenomenal job.
Oh yeah,
And sadly, it's his last feature film before he
right.
passed away. But he did a great job in the
It's
movie.
it's kind of like a groundhouse, isn't it? It's kind of
A little
gritty.
bit, yeah, yeah, a little bit. It's not as I mean, I would love to give a crack at it and make my own like creator cut and really grime it up a bit, and
Oh,
make it
like a
feel,
director's cut.
yeah, and kind of make it feel like it came straight out of like the late '70s, early '80s in terms of
Mhm,
horror.
mhm.
Kind of put those little cracks and pops into it's horror that it's too smooth and HD and crisp nowadays with everything. I think horror movies
Yeah,
look really great, just like comics look really great on newsprint. I think horror looks really great when you still had that little bit of grime to the
yeah.
film, and it's
And
not quite as sharp.
VHS tapes kind of had that, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah, it kind of was like an automatic part of it,
Hmm.
between the filming process and then the way the VHS transfer took place. It kind of always retained that
Have you
bit of
ever
film
been to a
quality.
drive-in movie?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It'd be great to be able to tweak the film like
Oh
that
yeah.
and then have it shown at a
Well,
drive-in.
I
That'd be awesome.
remember watching Carpenter's The Thing remake on at a drive-in movie. It was probably a double feature. That's the great thing about those things.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I mean, if nobody's ever really experienced a drive-in movie, they're really missing out, aren't they?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's a whole other world, a whole different experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, well, I want to thank you for coming on today, Pete. You're a busy man.
Yeah, unfortunately, time isn't my friend, but every now and then I have a little bit of time for something like this, so I appreciate you having me on today.
Hey, no problem. I hope we got you some backers. But you know, just so many things. I hope you'll consider coming on at some future date, especially with the new campaign or something coming up. At some future date, maybe come on and talk Alterna again. There's a million other questions I could ask you. Your influences and who your favorite artists are, or inkers, or do you even consider things like that? And
Oh yeah, yeah.
do you read anything besides alternative books nowadays?
Nowadays, other than indie comic stuff being made or
Okay.
Comicsgate creators, no, I don't read any of the mainstream
Any
stuff.
publishers that
Anytime
you
I,
can throw out there? Because I know there's been like
not really.
Caliber and you know.
Unfortunately, not really. I wish I
Okay.
could. I really wish I could.
You have
Every
time
time
to
I take a
read.
look, yeah, and that's okay if they feel the same way about me. But every time I take a look at some of the stuff and that's if it does catch my eye when it's on the shelf, I'm just like, man, oh, what happened to comics?
Yeah.
So I just shake my head about it. But I find a lot of great stuff on Indiegogo and creators that are in Artist Alley at different conventions. They're doing some really fun stuff. A lot of independent creators out there. Just that's where I'm finding a lot of it nowadays. So I'm either getting those books or I'm going into the back issues and I'm picking up old issues of Marvel, DC, and other independent titles.
Well, really, the way you got on, was I saw you on Twitter and you were saying, "Hey, looking, to come on some shows." And so, yeah, we set this up about, I don't know, 2.5 week, three, in the future here to have you on. So it's not a quick thing for you. I know you're a busy guy. I'm really surprised that you have time to read anything.
Yeah, well, we get a lot of submissions every month too. So between everything at Alterna and then now making my own series and then getting all the submissions
Yeah,
through and taking a look, time is not my friend. I
yeah.
wish it was. But
So
speaking
has
of
it?
time, I do have to go. I got a jet. I really appreciate you, Rex. Thank you for so much for having me
Thank
on.
you.
Everybody in the chat, thank you guys too. It means a lot that you guys are supporting not just Alterna, but a lot of independent creators out there. It takes a lot of effort and time to make a comic, and if you guys are enjoying those things, it means a lot that you guys support them. So thank you guys so much. But Rex, thank you, man. I gotta go. I hate that I gotta go and run like this, but
That's
seriously, it's
fine.
been a blast. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
You too, brother.
One of the best values out here, right there, Alterna Comics. Thank you,
Take
Pete.
it easy, everybody.
And hey, there you go. Interview with the man himself. Want to thank Pete again for coming on, and hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully, we had a lot of Star Wars talk there at the beginning. So if you like Star Wars and some insight into some of Pete and his influences, so um, great to see everybody in here. We had Sin Killer, Gap, Cross, Lorenzo, good stuff. Uh, Even Shadowhawk kind of chimed in, and Carrie. I mean, JV. The UK was represented in here. Just awesome, just awesome. 24 Eyes was in here. Doc Blaylock. I mean, you name it. Rerun trading. Just all of you. Thanks for showing up. I will be on the 4 o'clock shadow here in just a little bit, in about 3 hours, a little less than 3 hours. So yes, we will have our nighttime uh, 7 days to launch a Canadian Shield 2, yeah, from Cross Comics. So there you go. Check that out. I assume he has a mail up. Um, Carrie, it's always awesome to have some female representation in here, although um, they never say, and some lizard representation for Lorenzo there. And did Blue Harvest come in? Yeah. Wow. I've been watching. Cool. So there we go. Some UK goodness in here. But it really was great to see everybody in the chat, and hopefully you got some insights in there. The links are where you can watch it on replay. I dropped all the links. Carrie, there was one link that I didn't put in there. I kind of had taken it off already, and that's for the sign up. So you can just go to Indiegogo and look up Alterna, or just go on Indiegogo and look up Alterna, and it'll have Pete's sign up for the upcoming campaign. And on those signups, you usually get like a trading card or whatever. And Pete told us what he was going to get, what you were going to get for signing up. It really does help campaign. But that was the only one, Carrie, that I didn't put up. I did earlier, but you might not have caught it. So all the links were in the description at one point or another, and sometimes twice. So again, I just want to thank everybody for coming and checking in with us. And if you can catch the 4 o'clock shadow show, please do so. And thanks for watching. And as always, keep collecting.